What is the significance of Mexico taking on the role of this year's G20 presidency?
So it's at the same time a big honor and a big responsibility. And I think it shows that Mexico is every time in a best moment to work in the international arena, forging consensus. I think that has been one of the characteristics of Mexican foreign policy and in general terms of Mexico. When there have been many years ago the wars in Central America, Mexico works towards finding peace in Central America. Or, for example, in matters of disarmament, Mexico has always been active participant in finding disarmament and non-proliferation, non-nuclear proliferation. The last example, which I would like to give, is in the COP16, the Conference of the Parties of the Climate Change Convention, in which there hadn't been any movement forward in the negotiations. And after the Cancun summit, there was some basic agreements on things that were very important in order to protect the environment and channel resources for fighting climate change. So this, I think, it's a way of showing that Mexico is a country that knows how to deal with different issues difficult issues at the same time. Mm-hmm. For example, right now the economic crisis in Europe is something that we have to face, but at the same time we have to go on with other different responsibilities that the G20 has. Mm-hmm. So how to be able to assign the work and how we bring consensus into the discussion. So I think it's a very good moment for Mexico. As you know, we also have our fundamental macroeconomics numbers are very good. Mm-hmm. So I think that gives us the moral authority to have the presidency of the G20.
You mentioned COP16, and I wanted to raise the top agenda issue at G20 this year, which is green growth. Why is Mexico poised to lead on this front, and what are some concrete examples to promote green growth globally?
I think since the very beginning of his administration, President Calderon stated that the issue of climate change was one of his top priorities, and because of the damage we have felt within Mexico derived from the effects of climate change. As you know, we have had terrible floods, we have had some of the biggest droughts over the years. So in different moments he has proposed different issues. For example, the Green Fund was a Mexican proposal and he insisted on it. And right now we are discussing exactly how the Green Fund is going to work. Of course, where the funding is coming from. So for us it was very important to link how do we protect the environment and our natural resources at the same time that we grow. We don't think it's a dilemma between growing or investing money and resources in fighting climate change, or not only fighting climate change but protecting in general terms our environment and natural resources. We think it can become a compatible agenda. So that's when Mexico decided we have 5 priorities, but one of them should be green growth. And green growth is not an issue which is just dealt from the point of view of environmentalists. It's basically been seen as a cross-cutting issue in all the agenda, where the financial part should be taken into account, where the economic part should be taken into account, and the development part. So example is, for example, we are going to be discussing infrastructure and how can we put resources in infrastructure as a way of promoting growth in our economies. Well, let's channel the resources on those kind of projects which in the long term are sustainable and which can create jobs, but they can create jobs which are geared towards a green industry, which can be either new and renewable sources of energy, or it can be those industries that produce different merchandises or products that protect the environment or that are safer than the other kinds. Other issue which is very important is the financing, as I said, of the Green Fund, which is exactly the finance ministers were the ones who are very well positioned to decide where the funds can come from and in where to put them.
A challenge in general for the G20 involves building an agenda of manageable goals. As G20 president, how can Mexico lead a G20 agenda that has an impact and reaches those goals?
Well, I think that's a very good question that comes exactly to what the public opinion thinks about what's the G20 for. So if we are going to speak about, for example, economic growth, how can we achieve results which can impact the general public? And in that sense, for example, if we're going to talk about employment, how can we help to promote employment in each of our countries? I think sometimes this is an issue which is dealt at a national level, but we have several examples in each of our countries on how can we promote employment and how can we share these best practices among all of us, or how to avoid. Another example is protectionism. Protectionism is something that harms everybody, that it doesn't necessarily help towards growth. And so Mexico will be insisting that one of the engines of growth has to be free trade. And free trade affects you in your own way of life, because if you have access to products which are cheaper as a consumer, that's better for you. And how can it be done? Can it be done? Through competition, and through competition is with open markets. So there are different specific examples where we can show that the G20 is meaningful. For example, food security. One of the biggest problems families have is that almost half of their income is channeled for buying food. And if we have these big peaks in food, increasing food prices, it affects you in an everyday way. So we're discussing among agricultural ministers and among international organizations, how can we stabilize markets and have some control over stocks and control over the production, making larger the productivity, and of course one of the most important issues, distribution, which sometimes there's the food, but there's no way to transport it to the right place.